Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we like to blend casual conversations with some, insightful discussions on the latest in technology and gadgets. And this year, it's proving to be a pretty wild ride in the world of cybersecurity. So today we're going to dive deep into three major events that show just how complex this landscape is becoming. We're going to try and unpack why these events matter to you. So grab your headphones and let's get started.
I think what's important to note here is how vulnerable our systems are becoming. Even as technology advances, we often assume newer tech is more secure. But that's not always the case.
That's a great point. Speaking of vulnerable systems, our first stop takes us to the world of AI. AI is facing some pretty intense cyber attacks these days. Imagine a world where even our smartest AI is susceptible. And you've got a pretty good picture of what's happening with DeepSeek.
DeepSeek is an AI model developed by a subsidiary of a Chinese hedge fund company. And it's been under constant fire since its launch, late January 2025. We're talking about persistent denial of service, or DOS attacks, reaching 100 times the usual load. To put that into perspective, think of a popular website crashing during a huge sale because it can't handle the traffic. Now multiply that by 100, and you start to grasp the scale of these attacks.
So it's like someone is deliberately trying to overload DeepSeek and take it offline, kind of like a digital traffic jam.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, researchers uncovered a security flaw in DeepSeek, an exposed database leaking user queries. That means passwords, sensitive data, all potentially up for grabs. It's a double whammy. They're not just trying to shut it down, they're trying to steal information too.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got an AI system that's under constant bombardment. And on top of that, it's leaking sensitive user data like a sieve. Why does this matter to the average person, someone who might not even use DeepSeek?
That's where things get really interesting and concerning. AI is becoming increasingly pervasive in our lives. We see it in self-driving cars, healthcare diagnostics, even financial systems. The DeepSeek attack, well, specific to that model, highlights a broader issue: the security of AI systems as a whole. If a sophisticated AI model like DeepSeek can be compromised, it raises questions about the safety and reliability of other AI-driven technologies.
It's almost like the more advanced our technology becomes, the more vulnerable we are to these kinds of attacks. It's a bit unsettling, to be honest. But before we spiral into a digital doomsday scenario, let's shift gears to some good news, shall we? Law enforcement recently landed a major victory against cybercrime. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. Authorities managed to take down 5 major cybercrime forums in a coordinated international operation. These weren't your average internet forums. We're talking about platforms like crack.io and null.to, each boasting millions of users. These forums essentially acted as online marketplaces for stolen data, malware, and all sorts of illicit activities.
Wow. Millions of users. That sounds like a massive blow to the cybercrime ecosystem. What exactly went down during the takedown?
Think arrests, property searches, and even the seizure of over 300,000 euros in cryptocurrency. It was a significant disruption to these illicit operations. These forums facilitated the exchange of stolen data, hacking tools, and even provided a platform for criminals to connect and collaborate. Taking them down disrupts a major source of cybercriminal activity.
So it's like shutting down a digital black market. That has to be a major win for law enforcement. Does this mean we can all breathe a sigh of relief and assume the internet is a safer place now?
Well, not so fast. Unfortunately, in the world of cybercrime, it's a constant cat-and-mouse game. While taking down these forums is a huge victory, it's likely that new platforms will emerge to fill the void. Cybercriminals are resilient and adaptable, constantly finding new ways to operate under the radar.
That's a sobering thought. So what you're saying is this is just one battle in a much larger war against cybercrime.
Precisely. It's a constant arms race, with law enforcement and security experts trying to stay one step ahead of the criminals.
Okay, so we've talked about a sophisticated AI under attack.
Right.
And a major win against cybercrime forums. Now for our final story. Let's turn our attention to Apple, a company known for its strong stance on security and user privacy. But it seems like even tech giants aren't immune to vulnerabilities. What's going on there?
This is where things get really interesting. Researchers recently discovered 2 new vulnerabilities in Apple's silicon chips, cleverly dubbed SLAP and FLOP. These vulnerabilities exploit something called side-channel attacks, which are a bit more complex than your typical malware or phishing scam.
SLAP and FLOP. Those names sound almost too casual for something that could potentially expose sensitive data. Can you break down what these attacks can actually do?
Sure. SLAP, for instance, can potentially allow attackers to steal sensitive information like your Gmail emails, your Amazon purchase history, even your Reddit activity. It's all thanks to a clever exploitation of how Apple's chips optimize certain tasks.
Hold on. So just by visiting a website, someone could theoretically access all that information. That's a bit unnerving, to say the least.
And then there's FLOP, which can expose even more sensitive data, like browser history, emails, and even payment information. It essentially allows attackers to eavesdrop on the data flowing through your device by exploiting another quirk in Apple's chip design.
Wow. That's a lot of sensitive information at risk. So what's Apple doing about these vulnerabilities? Are they rushing to fix them?
Well, that's where things get a little concerning. Reports suggest that Apple doesn't see these vulnerabilities as an immediate threat. They haven't issued any urgent updates or patches, which has raised some eyebrows in the cybersecurity community.
Wait, they're not seeing this as a big deal? That seems like a risky stance to take,
Oh.
especially given the potential impact on user privacy and security.
It does raise some serious questions about how tech companies assess and address security risks. Are they prioritizing convenience and performance over security? Are they being transparent enough with users about potential vulnerabilities?
These are all great points. And it leads us to a larger discussion about the balance between innovation and security in the tech world.
Indeed. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from AI under attack to cybercrime takedowns, and vulnerabilities in even the most trusted tech companies. It's clear that cybersecurity is a constantly evolving landscape, and it's more important than ever for us to stay informed and vigilant.
I completely agree.
But before we get too deep into that, let's take a quick break and come back to explore these topics in more detail. We'll be right back after a short message.
You know, it's fascinating how these vulnerabilities really expose that cat and mouse game of cybersecurity. We shut down illicit forums only to find vulnerabilities cropping up in the devices we use every day.
It's like a digital whack-a-mole. You squash one problem,
Yeah.
and another one pops up somewhere else.
Exactly. And these side channel attacks like SLAP and FLOP, they're particularly tricky because they exploit the very design of the chips. It's not as simple as just updating your iPhone with a software patch.
So even if I keep my phone updated, I could still be vulnerable to these attacks. That's a bit concerning.
That's the thing about cybersecurity. It's an ongoing process. While updates help, sometimes the vulnerabilities are embedded deeper in the hardware. It raises some serious questions about how we approach security in an era where even the physical components of our devices can be exploited.
It seems like the bad guys are always one step ahead. So what can we, the everyday users, do to protect ourselves? Should we all just ditch our smartphones and go live off the grid?
I wouldn't recommend that. While the threat is real, panic is never the solution. Awareness is key. Understanding the potential risks can help you make more informed decisions about your online behavior and the technology you use.
Okay, so no more late-night online shopping sprees on my iPhone.
Not necessarily, but it's always good practice to be mindful of the websites you visit and the information you share online. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, and keeping your software up to date are still crucial.
So basic cyber hygiene still applies, even in this crazy world of AI attacks and silicon exploits.
Absolutely. Those foundational practices, they go a long way in protecting you. But I think it's also important to consider the bigger picture. What are tech companies doing to proactively protect us? Are they taking these threats seriously enough? Are they being transparent with their users about potential vulnerabilities?
It seems like we're placing a lot of trust in these companies to safeguard our data and privacy. Yet we see examples like the Apple situation, where the response isn't necessarily as proactive as we might hope.
Right, and that disconnect between the rapid pace of technological advancement and the measures being taken to secure those advancements creates vulnerabilities that cybercriminals are all too eager to exploit.
It's almost like we're building these incredible technological castles, but forgetting to install proper security systems. We're so focused on making things faster, sleeker, and more efficient that we sometimes overlook the crucial aspect of security.
I love that analogy. And unfortunately, in the world of cybersecurity, it only takes one weak point for the whole castle to come crashing down.
So where do we go from here? It feels like we're constantly playing catch-up with the bad guys, always reacting to the latest threat. Is there a way to shift from being reactive to proactive in our approach to cybersecurity?
That's the million-dollar question. It's true that cybersecurity is a constantly evolving challenge, but there are things we can do, both as individuals and as a society, to strengthen our defenses.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give us some hope here. What can we do to turn the tide in this digital battle?
Well, for starters, we need to prioritize security from the ground up. That means incorporating security considerations into the design of new technologies, not just tacking it on as an afterthought. It's about baking security into the cake, not just sprinkling it on top.
I like that. So it's about a fundamental shift in mindset, thinking about security from the very beginning of the development process.
Exactly. We also need to foster greater collaboration between tech companies, researchers, and law enforcement agencies. Sharing information and working together is crucial in this fight. Cybersecurity is not a problem any one entity can solve alone. It requires a collective effort.
That makes sense. A united front against cybercrime, sharing knowledge and resources to stay ahead of the curve.
Right. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to educate and empower users. The more people understand about these threats, the better equipped they'll be to protect themselves. Knowledge is power, as they say.
It really is. And in the digital age, cybersecurity knowledge is essential for everyone. It's not just about protecting our devices, it's about protecting our privacy, our finances, and our very way of life.
Well said. The digital world is so intertwined with every aspect of our lives that securing it is paramount.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this episode. We talked about an AI model under attack, a major victory against cybercrime forums, and vulnerabilities in Apple's silicon chips. It's been a wild ride through the world of cybersecurity.
It has been quite the roller coaster. But it's important to remember that staying informed and proactive is our best defense in this constantly changing landscape.
You got that right. So what does this all mean for our listeners? What's the key takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It's not just about the big tech companies or the government agencies. It's about each of us taking steps to protect ourselves and our data.
So we need to stay informed, stay vigilant, and demand better security from the companies we entrust with our data.
Absolutely. We can't afford to be complacent. Whether it's AI, cybercrime forums, or vulnerabilities in our devices, the threats are real. And they're constantly changing. It's up to all of us to stay ahead of the curve and build a safer digital world.
I think that's a great point to end on. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. We need to be informed, we need to be proactive, and we need to demand better from the companies that create the technology we rely on.
Well said. The future of our digital lives depends on it.
Now we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on all of this? What steps are you taking to protect yourself in this increasingly complex digital landscape? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to keep this conversation going.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.
You know what's really stuck with me through all these stories?
I'm curious, what is it?
It's Apple's reaction, or lack thereof, I guess you could say, to those SLAP and FLOP vulnerabilities. It's like they're saying, yeah, there are some holes in our defenses, but we're not too worried about them. Does this feel a little off to you?
It definitely raises some questions.
Right. Like what criteria are they using to determine the severity of a threat? And why aren't they being more transparent with users about the potential risks?
I think it boils down to a broader issue in the tech industry. The pressure to innovate quickly sometimes comes at the expense of security. It's like building a race car that can hit 200 miles per hour, but forgetting to install the brakes.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So what can we as users do about it? I mean, short of building our own tech empires with security as the top priority?
Well, for one, we can vote with our wallets. If a company isn't prioritizing our security, maybe it's time to consider alternatives. And even more importantly, we need to be vocal, demand transparency from tech companies, ask them tough questions about their security practices, let them know that security is a deal breaker for us.
That's a great point. We need to hold these companies accountable. After all, they are entrusted with a lot of our personal information.
Exactly. Our data is valuable, and we need to make sure it's being protected.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the overarching theme here is that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. It's not just on the tech giants. It's on all of us to stay informed, be proactive, and demand better security practices.
Absolutely. And by working together, we can create a safer and more secure digital world for everyone.
Well said. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope you found this episode insightful, maybe even a little thought-provoking.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
And for all you tech enthusiasts out there, what are your thoughts on Apple's stance on the SLAP and FLOP vulnerabilities? Does it change how you view their products? Let us know in the comments below.
We'd love to hear your perspective.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.